Good evening, Rambler fans, and welcome to this week's episode. The women's volleyball team lost this week to the University of Northern Iowa in 3 straight sets. Will they be able to bounce back and regain the top spot?
Meanwhile, the women's soccer team battled to a scoreless draw in double overtime versus Drake, while another stifling defensive performance by the men's soccer team gave the men's soccer team a 1-0 win over Northern Illinois.
Plus, we'll be looking at the expectation for the men and women's upcoming basketball season. All this and more coming up on the Rambler Sports Locker.
As always, thanks for tuning in tonight. I'm Dante, Violette.
And I'm Trisha, McCauley. The women's volleyball team lost to UNI in 3 straight sets. This is the first time this season the Ramblers have been swept during conference play. They lost their first match 14-25, the second match 19-25, and had a very close third match, losing by only 2 points, 24-26. Senior Brittany Brown led the team with 11 kills, but that wasn't enough against the Panthers, who are ranked second in the nation for digs per set. This loss dropped the Ramblers to a 6-3 conference record. They take on Bradley this Saturday, who they beat earlier in the season in 3 straight sets.
This week we'll figure out who should be superstitious of the number 13. Over to Mike Niche for this week's By the Numbers.
This week's By the Numbers is for all the superstitious soccer fans out there. Loyola's men's soccer team would tell you that the number 13 doesn't scare them. On September 13th, the Ramblers won 1-0 to secure their share of first place at the NIU Adidas Invitational Tournament. Redshirt senior midfielder Ben Crognell, number 13, was one of 4 Loyola players named to the all-tournament team that weekend. A month later, on October 13th, the men won again, and it was lucky number 13, Crognell, who scored his second game winner of the season. Loyola's women's soccer team lost 13 games for the 3rd time in program history last year, and said goodbye to 13 players before the start of this season. Some of the players might fear the number 13, but not the freshman who wears it. Vivian Schultz joined the Ramblers this season after getting the scoring record at her high school, the Academy of Holy Angels, with 58 goals in her time there. Her 45 assists were second most in school history. 58 minus 45, 13. And Schultz, the women's soccer team's number 13, happens to be the only player without a picture on the school website. Coincidence? I think not. Alex Morgan wears the number 13 for the U.S. women's national team and for her club team, the Portland Thorns. In 2013, the U.S. Soccer Federation put together a list of the all-time best 11 women and placed Morgan next to legends like Mia Hamm, Julie Foudy, Brandi Chastain, and my hometown hero, Christine Lilly, who, by the way, also wore the number 13. Unfortunately, the women's national team will be saying goodbye to Shannon Box and Lori Chalupny this week, 2 Chicago Red Star veterans who are retiring. The Chicago Red Stars had a great season this year, but they might be a little superstitious given the way that it ended. The Red Stars hosted FC Kansas City on September 13th in the National Women's Soccer League semifinals. But after a flurry of attempts for Chicago, Amy Rodriguez scored the opening goal for Kansas City, and 13 minutes later, it was Rodriguez again who scored the 3rd and final goal of the match to secure their win. And finally, the Chicago Fire, Major League Soccer's worst team this season. They dismissed their manager, Frank Yallop, last month after nearly 2 seasons in charge. During that time, Chicago lost 26 matches. Divide that by 2, you'll get 13. Their total wins during Yallop's tenure. That's it for this week's By the Numbers. I'm Mike Nitch. Back to you guys at the desk.
Trisha, are you scared of the number 13?
Not really, but only if the show ends in 13 minutes, 13 seconds.
All right. The men's soccer team has been carried by its defense all season, but its offense caught fire in the team's game last Saturday. The Ramblers hosted conference foe Central Arkansas. Loyola entered the night having posted 4 consecutive shutouts. On the 17th minute of the game, when Elliot Collier decided to take it himself, he dribbled through 5 Central Arkansas defenders to notch a beautiful goal. Ramblers led 1-0 on the second half, where Kevin Engster gave a nice touch pass in the box. Freshman Fabian Livka put the ball inside in the opposite post to give the Ramblers 2 goals. Later in the game, the freshman phenom was at it again. He scored and got the rebound in the post in the second goal of the night. The win against Central Arkansas gives the Ramblers a 2-1-1 conference record. The Loyola University Chicago's women's soccer team and Drake combined for 32 shots this evening at the Crowney Soccer Complex in Des Moines, Iowa. But neither team could find the back of the net as the two conference rivals battled to a scoreless draw in double overtime. With the result, the Ramblers move on to a 6-6-4, while the Bulldogs now sit at a 6-8-1.
The men's golf team wrapped up their season this past week at the Dayton Flyer Invitational. The Ramblers finished 9th out of 15 teams with a final score of 150, just 8 over par. Freshman Orion Yamet had an impressive second day with a final score of 72, just 1 over par. Yamet finished the competition tied for 10th place. The women's golf team will wrap up their season October 26th and 27th at the Braun Intercollegiate. Both teams start back up in February for their spring seasons.
This week, the Chicago Cubs lost to the New York Mets in the National League Championship Series. Now it's time for fans to continue the tradition of discussing the future of the franchise and the time frame for the next World Series.
Hi, welcome to this week's Ramble. I'm your host, Bridget Murphy, and I'm here with Madeline Kenny and Nader Issa. Yes, it is sad, but yes, it is true. As quickly as it began, the Cubs' postseason run has come to a close. And the curse of the Billy Goat is still in effect. But I'm here today to talk about when we think the curse will finally be lifted. Nader?
Well, obviously the Cubs overachieved this year. Everyone thought they would be better with Joe Madden. They got a big free agent pitcher in John Lester, Chris Bryant. A bunch of rookies came up, Kyle Schwarber, Addison Russell, all big-time rookies. But the Cubs did overachieve this year. They went farther than we expected. But with that said, I think next year is their year. They made it to the NLCS. They came up just short, not just short. They got swept by the Mets. But the Mets were clearly the more dominant team, more experienced, better pitching. If the Cubs can get a big free agent signing in the offseason, they'll be good to go.
That's refreshing, a Cubs fan saying next year is the year. Okay, Maddie?
Another year. I think, honestly, it'll probably be in a few years. It kind of always depends on that offseason, though, with trades and with draft picks, who they're going to get, how they develop their players, how they maintain a healthy roster and everything, And so, they have a lot of, rookies on the team right now, or, young players, all that are under 25, four major ones. And so I see them developing a lot, but I don't think they'll be ready in time for next season. I think that it's important they peak at the right time, and I do think that they began to peak at the right time this season, but then again, with the Mets, the Mets' last-minute trades really messed them up.
Now, Nader, you say that they overachieved this year, but they still didn't win the National League title. Now, do you think that next year is the year for them to take it all, or is next year just a stepping stone in their quest to eventually take it all?
I think next year is their year to take it all. They already have a great 1-2 punch in the rotation with John Lester and Jake Arrieta. They could still get another big picture. Zach Greinke opted out of his deal with the Dodgers. You never know. Maybe he's thinking Chicago. But they already have a great rotation. They already have a great lineup. The rookies, Chris Bryant already proved that he's one of the best players in the league without having that much experience. Just in his first season, he didn't even play a full season this year. And they already show they have the talent. They just needed the experience of getting disappointed in the playoffs. All great teams need to be disappointed in the playoffs before they can make it. Now with 1 or 2 offseason additions, they can be right there next year again.
And Maddie, what do you say to people who say that this youthful spirit that the Cubs have going for them right now is one of the reasons that they've been going so far? If you wait a couple years, will that wear off? Or will it just continue to mature into them being a more winning team?
I think it'll continue to mature, especially with developing their players in the right way. And so I think, yes, Chris Bryant was very successful this season. And yes, our offense was amazing, but there also needs to be development with the pitchers. There needs to be at least one more pitcher in that lineup. They need to develop more on the outfield and stuff with the pop flies during the Mets game. And so I just think that if they develop the players, then I think there would definitely be potential within the next 3 years. It's their year.
Okay, I'm going to go with Nader because I like the hopefulness and I know that all of the right tools are there for the Cubs, like you said, and it's honestly just a matter of them putting it together, and whenever they can do that, hopefully it'll be next year. Back to you guys at the desk.
And in true Cubs fan fashion, there's always next year.
Well, that's all the time we have this week. I'm Dante Violette.
And I'm Trisha McCauley. Tune in to next week's episode of the Rambler Sports Locker for an up-to-date look at Loyola sports and beyond. And as always, don't forget to turn out the lights.